Hi, I'm Mara Webster with In Creative Company, and thank you so much for joining us for one of our talks today. I'm so thrilled to be joined by the fantastic Janet Mock, who is a writer, director, and producer on one of my favorite shows, Pose. And the thing that I wanted to ask you about in going into season 3 is how you had to think structurally about story, narrative, and character in such a different way, because instead of it being about where these characters might possibly go in the future, it has to come to some sort of finite resolution by the end of the show. And so how did that really change a lot of conversations, even at the point in the writer's room of conceptualizing episodes?
Yeah, the thing that was so strange about this season, Mara, was really we had to figure out where exactly are we going to end their story. From the beginning, we had to think about the ending in a very intentional way. We knew that there were so many people invested in these characters' lives. They had followed them over 18 episodes, and they wanted a lot of them to have happy endings. And we had to have some really difficult conversations about who do we say goodbye to, who gets the triumphant ending, who gets the most amazing arc. I think one of the greatest challenges for us this season, beyond the bittersweetness of saying goodbye to these characters, was really the lockdown. The lockdown forced us to be even more incisive about what we wanted to say this season. What's our mission? What impact do we want to leave people with? What is the feeling that we want to leave people with? And I think that what we really wanted to leave people with was with love and family and connection. It was something that all of us being locked down around the world was going through this sense of alienation and isolation. And I think that more than ever, people needed, or our audience craved, an affirming, loving embrace from these characters. And I hope that it inspires people to continue to choose family, to continue to choose themselves in this process.
Yeah. And I also thought it was interesting that right after season 2, everybody immediately is always asking about some of the plot lines for the next season. And that from your perspective, it sounds like you like to really take a little bit of time just to let it sit and breathe and to wait for the episodes to come out and to see how people respond and where that emotional connectivity really is. What are the scenes that people are talking about the most that really brought the heart to them? And so how, going into this season, did that time away from the characters almost really help to just allow everything to breathe? And where are some of the places that then caused you to take some of the storylines?
Yeah, one of the greatest gifts that we've been given is the conversation and dialogue that we get to have with our audience. They're very vocal about what they love, and they're very vocal about what they hate. And so when we came into this season, we really knew that we were setting up storylines. And at the close of season 2, I directed the finale last season, and I directed the premiere for season 3. And we had to really continue those threads. We had to pay off on the setup. And I think that that's something that audiences get the most angry about, is when you set something up and all of a sudden it's gone. It just disappears because of a time jump, or it just disappears because of an actor's, availability or something. A lot of things happen in the process of producing and writing television. And so, for us, we were so grateful to have the space. And I'll return to the lockdown because I think it was a shared experience that we had. But I was directing the premiere in March. I flew to New York in February. I was there in March. I prepped for my episode. I shot, I think, 10 days. And then we got the notice that we were going to shut down and everyone's going to go home for 3 weeks. 6 months later, we returned. And in that 6 months, we were able to do something we had never done before. We had remote conversations, phone calls. We did our writer's room in very creative ways. We worked in Google Docs. We did all of these things and had these conversations about what's happening and bubbling up now in the culture that we can put onto Pose, and to show, and I think this was such a gift for us, to show how there were pandemics that had happened before and people had to survive plagues. So we have this huge boogeyman of HIV/AIDS on Pose since the very first episode. And we were able in season 3 to go even deeper because everyone has now had a shared experience of surviving and living through a pandemic. And we were able to infuse the script with, the medical industrial complex and police brutality and healthcare and access. We're able to hit the nail on those themes hard. And I think if we did not have the time, we wouldn't have done that. And the season, I don't think, would have been as powerful. Every year, we, like clockwork, March starts and we're back shooting, September starts, and we start the room. March, September for 2 seasons in a row, 3 seasons almost. That's how we started season 3. And so it was nice to have the time to reflect, the time to really think about the actors and what their strengths are and what we need to write to, and what are the things the audience is saying meant so much to them, and how do we write even more to that. And we learned from our mistakes as well. You know, season 1, there were, it was less ambitious, I think, but it was a more simple story. Season 2, we went bigger and broader, and we had like the pop cultural conversations about Madonna and all this stuff. And I think we lost some magic in that. In season 3, we're able to steer the ship back and to say, this is our lane and this is what we do well. And I think 3 seasons in, you're like, we know what this is. We know what Pose is. We know who these characters are. And we were able to write confidently in that direction.
And one of the things that I wanted to ask you about in relation to your work as a producer on the show is the way that you then in turn work with a lot of the other directors who are coming in, because it's a very different experience for guest directors to come in. They're not in the writer's room. They don't have all the information that you do, and how you really work to support them in setting them up with a lot of details of, okay, actually, we just filmed this episode and this was really the emotional fabric of that scene. This is what we're trying to build to for 3 seasons from now, and the way in which you really work to support them in that sort of realm.
Yeah, it was a great experience this season to be the producing director. I thank you for asking me about that. I think it's quite invisible work. You know, Stephen Canals and I, who's the co-creator of Pose, we shared responsibilities this season, but he only had 1 episode under his belt. He directed 3 episodes, I directed 3, and we had the great Tina Mabry, who's been on with us since season 1, and I was able to help her understand where we were going this season because she didn't have access to all the scripts, and kind of let her know and help her in her vision, help her sharpen her vision, and just aid her. And so for me, my responsibility wasn't to come in as a producer and a writer on the show and tell her what to do, but was to aid her in something that she may have read. Like, when you said this, what did it mean? Could we go here for it? Do you think we could block it in this space instead of where it's in here? Or do you think we could add another character in and pull out another character? And so it was a great collaboration. I mean, I love working with directors. I don't get to spend as much time with them because there's only 1 director on set usually. And with Steven, he just called for a different kind of support, which was just, you know, me that be there to cackle with him and help, you know, bring levity to a heavy moment. Help produce actors, you know, when little catastrophes are going on set. And so I showed up in support in that way. And there's to be a second eye for both of them. I really prided myself on being able to show up and just be a resource and another tool that they could use. And that we all cared so much about the story and the characters in the world. And so when you come in with that, it's only more love and more greatness to come out of that collaboration.
And for your work as well as a director, I imagine that it's a slightly different dynamic and approach when you're shooting the first episode of a season, the final episode of a season, or, you know, the first one that you did that was episode 6. So it was coming right at the crux in the middle of all of these plot lines. And so how does that really adjust when you're doing an episode in the middle of a season, the way that you're then working with the cast? Because to that point before, you're starting to build up a lot of tiny, minute threads and details. Okay, we need to have a little bit of friction in this relationship, but we don't want the audience to know that the friction's building yet. And so you're also creating a lot of invisible details with the cast as well.
Yeah, you know, usually it's when you have to give a little sidebar and say, you know, this is going to happen with your character and such and such. So that's why I need you to do it this way. Yeah. Sometimes you lie, you're manipulative as a director at times, but most times it's just kind of like bringing them in. I think oftentimes you give actors, specifically thinking about actors, you give them the information that they need in the moment. You don't give them too much. I think it can become too overwhelming because they all have their own processes. And so for me, again, it's just how can I show up and ensure that the space is safe and comfortable. And sometimes safe and comfortable means they need to know where we're going to be 3 episodes from now. They need to know that now, or they need to get a little inkling. But I always tell them that in real life, you don't know where you're going. And so TV is a great practice for that. All you have is this present script and this present scene in this present moment. So just do that wherever you are right now, and I will steer you and guide you toward getting what I feel that we need for where we're possibly going to be going 3 scripts from now, 4 scripts from now, 5 scripts from now. You know, I had the great unique experience this season of directing the premiere, writing and directing the premiere, writing and directing the 4th episode, which is our first big bottle episode. It's Pose, but it's not Pose. It's really Pray Tell's homecoming episode. And it's very special. And then I was able to direct one more episode after that, which was episode 6. So I was kind of like working with the actors all the way from when we only had 3 scripts to then when we had 2 more scripts that were writing coming up later, and then 6 where there was only 1 more script after that, and everyone kind of knew where that was ending. And what I loved about that experience was that I got to see, even within this one span of a season, see how the actors grew more comfortable, more confident, more grounded in who they are and who their characters are. They were able to see the distinction and feel the bridge and the gap between the two, and that was a great joy. We were able to have some great guest actors this season who really talked about how they loved that this show really gave actors a chance to grow. And that's one thing that I love so much about Pose, is that folks may not have had the most experience when they came in, and for many of them, no experience being in front of the camera. But when we gave them the opportunity, they all showed up prepared, willing, with open hearts. And I think that that's the process and the environment that we created on the show that I'm most proud of, is that it was a safe space so that people could come in and do courageous work.
I also love that point that you were just making about not always giving the actors all of the information. And I've heard you talk in the past about how even your DGA training, that one of the crucial bits was say the minimum amount possible. And so within that, I wanted to ask you very specifically about what that language looks like when you're working with the actors, the type of communication that you'd like to have with them, where you can use the minimum amount of conversation and dialogue to really give them the maximum amount of detail that they might need for a scene.
For me, I share a lot of myself when I'm working with the actors. I think that it's really important that as they're doing this vulnerable, courageous work, that I am just as vulnerable. I tell them where I was sometimes, if they need to hear it. When I wrote something, where was this? What was a real place inside of me that I excavated out so that they could have these words? Or when they're dropping a certain word, and they may not think it's important, but it's very important to me. And this is why it's important. So I need you to da 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 da. And so for me, I do a lot of whispering. I'm in my actor's ear a lot. I'm with them a lot in between setups. You know, when our DP, Andre Schwartz, is there setting up the cameras and the lights, or moving the cameras and the lights, I'm with the actors. I like to sit with them, especially if it's a person's heavy scene or they have the chunk of the dialogue and I know that they're driving it. I feel that me being close to them enables them to show up and do their best work. I believe in a quiet set. I believe in a set that is respectful of actors' processes, meaning that they have to go somewhere else sometimes in between setups. And so my job is to ensure that they can do that work on set. For me, I think it's brevity, conciseness. I think that what actors really want from you is knowing that, number 1, you're watching. Number 2, you know what you want. And number 3, you know how to shift them in a way that moves them with you to the destination that you want to go. It's not so much, you need to do this way because I want to see this. It's how can we make sure that it's a motivated choice, that the choice makes sense, and that the choice fits the grander vision that I have for this story. And, but then also being very respectful that they also have a vision for where the story should go and where their character should be. And sometimes their ideas are better than mine. And that's when I back up and I say, you know what, you got this. Let's just do another take.
I also wanted to dive into talking about the ballroom scenes, because they're such a phenomenal and crucial aspect of the show. And I think what you all managed to do with them story-wise is really fantastic, because in other shows that would be a cutaway scene, but in these are the scenes. And you really pay attention to every minute detail. You know, you look at one actor in the tiniest corner at the back of a frame, and every detail of them, not just in terms of what they're wearing, hair, costume, makeup, but the way that they're performing to camera all adds to it. And then at the same time, you've got these huge crane shots coming right into the center of things. And then you also have a lot of really intimate close-ups for the story and emotional connectivity. So how is the journey of blocking out and working with all of the actors, whether it's the person closest to the camera or the person at the back of the room, completely different to all of the other types of scenes that you end up filming on this show?
Mara, you have just distilled the magic of what it means to direct a ball scene. You can't forget the actor in the corner, right? Who may not have any lines, but is essential to our coverage of like making this world feel alive and full of aspiration and dreams and hopes and visions, right? And so for me, what's most essential is in the chaos of these scenes, where this season, you know, last season we went up to 150 background actors, not including our principal cast on that set. Season 1, we were more in the 80s. This season, we were in the 60s because of COVID, because of our safety protocols, right? And so because it was interior, even though the set is huge, we had a set capacity, including cameras that could be in those scenes. So it made it that much more challenging. We had to rely a little bit on visual effects for a lot of our crane wide shots, right? So those shots now, they can no longer move, go wide and then move in. They have to be locked and stay up there. So we have to create the movement through Steadicam, mostly. It's through our Steadicam passes or our smaller framed passes on the crane where it's moving with a performer. And so for us, those scenes are all about dreams. It's all about being able to perform the reality that you know yourself to be if you were given the chance. And so for me, what's important is that the ball scenes felt just as full, just as alive, just as audacious and bold in color and movement. And so my process usually really is charting it all out. I put down on my notebook exactly where every actor is, and I write a beat sheet. A beat sheet meaning, you know, reactions or looks that I need. So if it's a look between Blanca, who's in the audience, and Bertel at the mic, that I ensure that I have that on there because a cameraman may not know that that's what I need, right? Or there's a moment where Blanca's fearful of the new performer that's coming at the top of the thing. So how does that move her vision here? So we need the shot that goes from her here to her face turning, cut to him there. And so making sure that we have those beat sheets and shot listing as well. And it's also, you know, those days are so chaotic that you have to ensure also that actors all know that they're important to the scene because they can also feel like glorified background actors in a way, glorified extras. And so it's just letting them know that, you know, the camera is coming to you. It's probably not going to come to you until 12 hours from now, but it's coming. So just be prepared for your moment because you're going to get one or two takes on these passes. And so it's kind of like you're a general preparing for war in a way. You have to wear a lot of different hats and manage a lot of different personalities and bodies in that space and making sure everyone knows from the very top of the day that each person in here will be seen, that we thank you for showing up and that this will be a long haul of a day. But I promise you that the end product, you all will be seen, you all will be happy, and it will be phenomenal.
There's also a really remarkable way in which the show carries a lot of through threads of scenes from a ballroom, you know, to Blanca's house or to the diner. And it's the same scene, but they're wildly different in terms of scope. You know, like you said, you've got like the bold, audacious movement of the ballroom, and then suddenly you have the intimacy of a two-hander. So how does that really fit into structuring out, even at the script level, of how those scenes are going to carry through, have that commonality, feel very much emotionally connected, but yet the grandeur and the scale is so wildly different?
You know, one thing that we started doing a lot more, and I think we did a lot of this in season 2 and a lot less in season 3 because the ballroom scenes were just technically, we didn't know how we were going to get there. And like, even if we're going to get a possibility to do them, but we had a lot of scene work in the ballroom. And one thing that I love that we did a lot more in season 3 is that you still fill the ball, but then there's also the world of the ball that's there. There's the backstage, there's the hallways, there's the stairwell, there's the bar upstairs, the bar in the back. There's a green room downstairs. There's another dressing room. And so for us, we're able to stage scenes like those two-handers in there before a performance, or, you know, someone throwing down with someone and challenging them. We could show that off of the ballroom. And I think that the way that those things connect, it's like, for us, I guess the ballroom is like Sunday church. So you're there to be in communion and to like applaud and be a part of the congregation. And then afterwards you have brunch. So you go to the diner. You go home afterwards, you know, you go with your work week. And so then there's the two-handers that are in the diners. There's the two-handers are at work. There are the scenes of the ensemble at family dinner at the Evangelistas. And so for us, the connective tissue through it all is that family does a lot of different things together and a lot of different things with different members. And so because we have an ensemble family drama, we're able to show all of the colors of them at work, them at home sad, them at home eating, them at home, you know, watching television together and gossiping, them getting ready together backstage, all these great things that I think adds a lot of color and context so that when it comes to the celebratory moment of Sunday church of the ball, they can all just be joyous and happy and shady and fun and all of the things that we want them to be. And then it's also a bigger cathartic experience for the audience to also have a breather, to be like, okay, you know, I can breathe a little bit. I can have a little joy and fun because I just saw them talking about HIV/AIDS medication for, you know, a 3-minute scene that was real heavy.
And you've also said from the very beginning of this show that it was always really important and very clear that Blanca was the central heroine of the story. And even when you watch the show, you know, maybe there's a scene with Damon and Ricky, but we're seeing them through the perspective of Blanca, or, you know, it's Pray Tell in a hospital bed, but again, through Blanca's perspective. So how does that really infiltrate into the writer's room and again, kind of like into a lot of the blocking of scenes, that you're always really centering it back to her, even if the scene isn't about her character?
Yeah, I think just Blanca's, you know, presence as, you know, what's so interesting to me is that MJ, I really do believe, is one of the most overlooked performers in our industry, period. And I think that that speaks so closely to the work that women do, specifically women who are mothers. Mothers do all the work. They nurture, they carry the babies, they nurture them, they bring them into the world, they rear them, they give them resources, they love on them. And their babies leave, you know, and no one's thinking about what the mother did. They're celebrating the baby, right? Who's now grown up and been this great thing in the world. And I really see that with MJ and her power and prominence on this show. You know, there's a scene that Stephen Canals directed in episode 2 of this season that is one of my favorite scenes. It's Blanca and Pray Tell sitting in the hallway of the hospital where Blanca now works, and Pray Tell is having a conversation about why he drinks. And it's a conversation about self-hate. And in the whole thing, Blanca doesn't have a word. She doesn't say a single thing. She's sitting there, the entire thing is shot in a 2-shot, and you just see it on her face, the pain, the reflection, the affirmation of this dear friend of hers who is talking about hating himself so much that he drinks to not hate himself anymore. And we know in the next scene, for us, we know now that the next scene is a cut to her driving a car through the suburbs, going upstate to upstate New York, and you reveal that Pray Tell is next to her, and she's driving him to rehab. And to me, it's the work, right? It's the work of what a mother does. She is the glue, she is the bridge, she is the pathway for all of these characters to confess, to be taken care of, to be held, to be supportive. And I think really Blanca is just our Northern Star. And that's what MJ is. Her mere presence in a scene is everywhere. The House of Evangelista, we saw her build that. And so when there's a scene in there, even if she doesn't say a word, the house wouldn't be here, these people wouldn't be here, they wouldn't know each other if it wasn't for the connective tissue of Mother Blanca. And so for me, when I'm blocking a scene, I'm always thinking about how close or distant or adjacent is Blanca to the beat that I'm trying to communicate in the scene. What is the emotional feeling? And what is her reaction to that? And how is she a conduit to making this conversation possible, for this person to have this revelation, for this child to be pushed to do more, for someone to confess and to reveal themselves so they can become their better selves. Yeah.
And actually, one of the scenes that I wanted to ask you about in terms of the two of you working together on it was the lip sync moment at the end of season 2, because it's one of those scenes that you physically have to catch your breath when you're watching it. It's that powerful and impactful when you're watching it. And her performance is so astounding, down to not just even the lip syncing aspect, but you can see the reverberations in her jaw that she's manifesting through the lip syncing. And so I just wanted to ask you about what that journey looked like with the two of you really figuring out the minutiae of that performance for that particular moment to create that impact.
A lot of people don't know, but MJ she's a pop star in the making. And so I'll be honest, there wasn't much I had to do. I just needed to make sure that the cameras caught it at the right angles and times of what I needed. We did have to work out some choreography with her breakaway outfit stuff. We had to work out some stuff about where the other kids were in relation to her so that we could have those great family tableau moments that I wanted, which was Blanca like this and her children right behind her with their flags up on their knees behind her, supporting their mother, right? And so those moments were super important to me. It was the little intimacies too that were important. Like, Blanca having a blanket and looking very sick, and having, Angel, who just looks so gloriously glamorous, behind her pushing her mother in slow-mo, basically, for the moment that she knows that's about to happen, which is the tearaways. And when, she pulls them off, I love, India has a moment where she turns around and takes in the ballroom because she wants to see them gag too. Just like the audience wants to see them gag. And so, you know, I worked with MJ, not a lot on that. I didn't have to direct her much on that, I'll be honest. She really did it on her own. She wasn't even choreographed. It was all very natural. And I think a lot of our greatest moments are not choreographed because the actors are forced to be uncomfortable because they don't know the next move. And so they just move over their body, and then we just follow that and do that over and over and over again. Ryan had the same approach. And I stole that approach from Ryan when he directed Angelica Ross in Never Knew Love Like This Before, episode 204, for her ending triumphant scene in the ballroom. But what was important for me to communicate with that scene was, again, the fact that this is their church. This is where they come to be sanctified and saved and to stand witness to each other's greatness. And so in that moment, the Star-Spangled Banner is really a great kind of metaphor to what they want to pledge allegiance to. They want to pledge allegiance to community, to family, to love, to creativity, to being audacious and bold in the pursuit of your dreams. And I think that Blanca was the perfect person to sing that. And we also then have a great lineage on the show of MJ performing songs by Whitney Houston, largely because MJ too is from New Jersey, like Whitney, and is also a vocalist and a singer, and is a great lineage that we want to uphold. And also I'm the biggest Whitney Houston stan that there will ever be in the world.
And with your own work on the show as well, there's something that really struck me when you said it about how you didn't necessarily feel like an artist before you directed that first episode in season 1, and how that really helped you to feel like an artist in a completely different way. And so I wanted to ask you about the way in which it did, and the way in which that was so transformative and made you show up differently, not just for the work that you were doing, but made you show up differently for yourself in telling stories.
What a question. Yeah, you know, Pose has really just been my film school. I think that what was so great with seasons 1 and 2, I got to learn so much. And then also going off on other sets like The Politician, and then doing my 2 episodes for Hollywood on Netflix. I got to learn so much. And to be in other sets too is a huge learning experience. You know, Pose is like my home. It's like my living room. It's very easy for me. It's hard emotional labor at work. You have to do a lot. You have to spend a lot of time there, but it feels very comfortable. And so I learned a lot from other sets. And then in just having experience, you just gain so much more confidence and clarity about what your style is, about what you're attracted to, and also how the actors show up differently for every director. They're not all the same every single time. They have different relationships. And I think that the relationships that I have with the actors are just very deep. Specifically, you're thinking about, you know, the women on the show. We have shared experiences. I walked exactly where they walked. I had the same doubts and fears. And I think that there's a shorthand that's there. I don't have to say much to them, but when I say that I got it, or that I need more and I need them to push more, they do it for me. And I think it's because of the sisterhood piece of it, the family aspect of it, the shared experience. But I think when it comes to me being an artist, I think I know what I like, and I know what my shots are now. I know how to technically do it and cut it all together. I know how to cut around things that may not be working on the day. I know how to lift scenes that I didn't like on the day and I don't like it in the cut. You know, so it's just, I'm more decisive now. I'm more clear. I'm even more confident and bold in communicating exactly what I need from them. And I think that that's a great comfort for actors. And it's a great comfort for the crew as well, that you have a director that knows exactly what they need.
And with everything that this show has meant throughout the process in making it, you know, it's a show that as an audience member, you watch it and you can feel the heart and the emotion and the vulnerability that people brought every single day in making this show. Now that everything's wrapped up, what is it that you're going to miss the most about the day-to-day of showing up on that set?
Seeing all those faces. I think it's seeing all those faces. I was able to mourn a little earlier about writing for the characters. I'll never get to write for these characters again. That's a fact. So I will miss speaking and experiencing life through their eyes and their voices, through their pain, through their joys. But mostly I'm gonna miss being in a safe space that we built together. I'm gonna miss the the magic of being around these people all the time with a guarantee that we're all going to show up at a certain time, do this thing for 12 to 14 hours, go home, and then do it again tomorrow. Every season when we wrapped, it was always sad, but we're like, see you in 6 months, you know? And now it's kind of like, hopefully I'll see you in 6 months on another project I'm working on, or but it'll never be posed. And I think that it was really lightning in a bottle. I think that first season specifically, we did it in a complete vacuum. That whole season was shot without, I think, most of the actors seeing a frame of themselves. So they weren't acting to something or trying to meet a moment or a beat that had become so routine on the show. There was no routine. We were building the show. We were building those beats. We were building the elemental things that made the show great. And I think in season 3, everyone came with so much more confidence, so much more, I think because everyone kind of knew it was the end, they came fully swinging, ready to do their best work. And I will say that every single actor on this show showed all the way up, and it just made me miss and love them that much more.
Yeah. I mean, when I think about everything that this show has done and the way that we talk about the power of storytelling, I've worked in a lot of places where when you talk about worst case scenario, everybody goes, well, we're not saving lives. And this is storytelling that literally has the ability to save lives. And the impact that it has had has been so incredible. And thank you so much for sharing all of this with us, Janet.
Oh, thank you so much, Mara. I really appreciate you creating this space. And yeah, poses impactful storytelling that, you know, hopefully creates a model for the industry so that folk who have traditionally not been at the center of the frame or behind the camera are given the pen and given the opportunity to tell their stories.